crucified him and continued killing people here and there, and everybody else kept killing each other, everybody else. So it was just a messianic hope, and we keep the messianic hope, right? In Catholicism, people have the hope that if they are devotees of Jesus, go to church and so on, something particularly good will happen. Now they can entertain that hope, provided it doesn't happen.
Makes me think of Waiting for Godot.
Exactly. Yes. Same thing. Right.
Well, what did she say?
Waiting for Godot.
Oh, the Jews also are waiting for the Messiah.
Sure.
Well,
and it's interesting that
for Messiah. Yeah, that's right.
And it's interesting that the idea of the Messiah is considered that it will be the end of the world, I think, right?
It will be the end.
So it's the end.
The rapture is what the Christians are waiting for.
Right. Yeah.
It's also interesting that every now and then there's a group that comes along that says that it's going to happen at a certain time.
Yeah.
And then they are so disappointed when it doesn't happen. I mean, so it's like the reverse almost of the messianic hope.
Yes, right.
Because they believe it's actually going to happen, does not remain unborn. Something I can't quite get that.
It does remain unborn, but they deal with the frustration in a particular way.
Well, the fantasy gets acted out with the stated date for the end of the world. When that enactment is not realized, then there's this what you're talking about, Bill,
the big letdown.
The despair.
The despair, yeah.
Because somebody mentioned anxiety, and it's useful, I think, to think about this as attempts to manage anxiety, and it really attempts to transcend anxiety, sort of the omnipotent notion that you can solve your anxiety, and that's the gambit to avoid thinking, and which would actually be grappling with the anxiety and with the actual conditions of existence and trying to solve them in time. But in this basic assumption, there's a movement out of time, as he talked about.
Right.
In this case, towards a future that never arrived.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, yes, go ahead.
So is that what people were talking about that idea of the end of the world as a different way of transcending anxiety? Is that like a minus K idea? Would that be like?
Well, I think you're going fast forward. It
just never occurred to me. Yeah.
Well, that's Bion's epistemology, which we are going to tackle with at the last meeting, right?
Oh.
But I think you keep that in mind, because you will be able, yes, to correlate the basic assumptions to minus K, meaning the opposite of the link to knowing, or the link of interest, or the link of or to wishing to get to know, right? In this sense, the fact that the hope does never get satisfied is the carrot, like curiosity, that keeps you going. If your curiosity were to get satisfied, right, let's say that a leader does respond to all your answers, that precludes your thinking. Now you don't need to think anymore, because someone has already all the solutions for you. So you just need to relax and let someone else do the work, right? If the Messiah were to come, right, and redeem all our sins, then you would be done. You don't need to even go on living. I mean, you could just die in peace. But what about the fight-flight group, let's say?
Before you
What
go
about
on,
what?
Yes, go ahead.
When you said that, it made me think about, I don't know if it's intended this way, but the pairing basic assumption, when you were talking, it made it seem related to the dependence basic assumption. Like, it seemed almost developmental. Like, first you think there's a leader who can save you. It's one person and you hope that they'll tell you the way. But then in the pairing, it almost seems developmental. You know that maybe two people create something, but it also seems like defending against the first basic assumption, the dependency. It never happens. But so they seem very related when you said that.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure that it's necessarily developmentally one coming after the other, being that Bion at least thinks that it's a mindset that we are all born with, all the basic assumptions. It's not that they develop, actually they don't develop, they interfere with development, but I understand when you're thinking of development, you're not thinking of development in the sense of growth, but development in the sense of becoming manifest, right? Yes, in that regard I would say that certainly the relation of the baby to the breast would be a model or an example of the basic assumption of dependence, whereas once the baby developmentally a little later is aware of the triangle formed by mother, father and the baby, and that there is more than just a breast, then that would link to the basic assumption, or would, let's say, give grounds to the externalization of the basic assumption of pairing, right? I mean, the child that would think that he's safe because mommy and daddy will just take care and provide everything for his or her security. And all children want to think that, even if mommy and daddy oftentimes come too much, right? I mean, if the house is on fire, mommy and daddy are not able to put the fire out. If there is a war, there is very little that mommy and daddy can do. I mean, see how many children get killed in any war, in Afghanistan only recently. Well, what could the mummies and daddies do? Nothing. But the children want to think that mommy and daddy will know how to stop the wars and how to make everything safe, even if it won't happen, it has never happened, right? Yes. What about fight-flight? Can we go into fight-flight or any further questions? Okay. What about the basic assumption of fight-flight?
Can I read it?
Yes.
It's from page 73 in my copy. In the third type of basic assumption, group members unite in order to fight against or escape from a threat. The group can opt for either activity with apparent indifference, hence the name fight-flight. Group members accept a leader whose demands offer them opportunities for fighting or for evasion. In this type of situation, the therapist will quickly realize that the group unites easily around any proposition that expresses violent rejection of all psychological difficulty, or offers means of avoiding difficulty by creating an external enemy.
Right.
Yeah, that reminds me of the couples who come to therapy, and the thing that cures them is their hatred of the therapist.
Yes, exactly. Right. Very good. Yes. Did you hear that, Judy?
No, I didn't hear that.
Say it again.
That reminds me of the couple who comes to a marriage therapist, and the thing that cures them is their hatred of the marriage therapist.
Right.
Right.
That's why I was wondering if one way in which the fight-flight group could happen is that the group would unite against the leader or the therapist or as the threat. Every time I talk, something terrible happens.
Here, I think in her face.
Oh, let's see.
Every time what?
Bill thinks that there might be air moving through your over your microphone.
Robert,
Is that possible?
each time you move your laptop, it stops. It's just
Yes.
a readjustment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so don't move it. It's okay.
No, it's the other way around. I have not moved it, but when the noise starts and I move it, then it's right. Then
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sound
yeah.
stops.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we have a common enemy here.
I feel much better.
I'm thinking about Sam's comment about the developmental parallel, and I can't help but think about a teenager in a family system after there's been the identification with the breast in infancy, and then the coming to terms with a parental group, and then fighting, but being very attached to the family system, and then not being able to interrupt the family system, and so having to flee. And it's interesting. Your idea, Sam.
I wonder too if you mentioned sort of the liberal notion in the pairing of Obama and Hillary making a utopian world. If this relates to the opposite of that, the fascist side, in a social sense of right-wing groups making an external enemy that they all can gather around and attack,
Yes.
and blame for all the troubles of their internal troubles that are externalized to the enemy.
Right.
Right wing or
Fascist,
left?
fascist. Well, left too. Yeah, I mean, left and right meet in the same fascist place.
Exactly. Racism, genocide,
Yeah.
right? Illness. We have to fight an epidemic. We have to fight an illness, right? Psychiatrists become a fight-flight group, right? If they have to find more and more drugs and spend millions and millions of dollars to fight schizophrenia, autism, or whatever, right? And they're always creating new theories that autism is because you spend too much time on the screen. This was one, we probably read it 2 years ago, that autism was widespread in children of the employees of Microsoft, because the thesis was that the radiations from the screen changed the chromosome of the sperms of the parents, of the fathers, and therefore did some mutation that made the children become autistic, right? Not that the parents didn't devote any attention to the children because they worked around the clock 7 days a week. But this is an example of fight-flight dilemmas or fight-flight basic assumptions rather than thinking, right? Because if you think, you would say, autism has existed for as long as humanity, right? So why is it Microsoft now? Do we have to fight Microsoft and the radiations from the screens? Can that be possible? I mean, if you just think, it doesn't hold, does it?
It's sort of like when a patient wants to think about their problems as being biological and not have to think about the dynamic aspect of it. Like, it's easier to say, well, it's chemistry, and
yes,
it's
chemistry
not.
or it's a gene, nothing to think about, because thinking is not going to help anyway, so why bother? Every time she starts talking.
No, I can't.
Yeah, it starts every time you start talking.
Huh?
When you start talking, then is when the noise starts.
No.
But you have to talk. Sorry.